Welcome back to our video series featuring commentary from our expert panelists that participated in our webinar looking at communication challenges and learnings from COVID-19. The pandemic saw top futurist, author and former judge of the new Inventors, Mark Pesce, with huge challenges as he no longer could confidently give any insights to the future beyond a few days. With Action seeing Australian cases kept at bay compared to other regions, Mark shares some key insights into what we can expect for the remainder of 2020. Before throwing to Mark, I want to plug his Horizon report, which is providing quality commentary focusing on what we can expect from COVID-19.
But one of the things I want to point at, and one of the reasons the Horizon report exists, is because as a futurist, I try to look at a billion seconds. That's 30 years or a generation. And I have a podcast on that subject because that's an appropriate length of time for a futurist. Well, in March, right around that second week of March, you all remember it. It was the week that kind of went on forever. The horizon that we could look at, what I call the forward planning horizon, when things were predictable, between the breaking news, it collapsed from, in my case, a billion seconds down to about a half an hour. And this is why all of us were walking around shell-shocked. The world kept on changing very, very quickly. And I realized as a futurist, I had to approach this by thinking about how I could help people plan for how long we could actually see in front of us, the horizon. In April, we had a horizon of a couple of days. Because things kind of got calm by the time I did the May report, we could actually see out to the end of the month, and we could predict that if things had gone well, kids would probably be back in school at the end of the month. Now, here we are at the end of May. This is a really good day to be doing this talk because as almost everyone, at least on the East Coast of Australia, is aware, the NRL resumes tonight. And this is a huge event, not just because it's about return to normalcy, but because of how it was done. And this comes to the major findings now in the June report. And the first of the major findings is what I'm calling the rise of the sterile economy. In fact, people are now looking at everything in terms of safety, and that safety is connected directly to cleanliness and sterility. So any brand or any situation that makes people feel uneasy about how unclean it is going to reflect very, very badly on them. And so there's going to have to be a lot of very public-facing hand washing, as it were, around cleanliness. That's going to be important. When the NRL decided that they were going to come back online, the very first thing that they did was they appointed a biosecurity officer. This is not a mistake. That's how it has to work. And that's a key element of the sterile economy. What it's pointing to now is something, if you Google Scott Galloway and the phrase, every business is a health business, this is the second key finding. As we are now returning to work, every business, and Steve, you just pointed to this, has to think through all of the situations around how to keep all of their employees healthy. The NRL is doing this about how do you keep the players healthy? How do you keep all the people who are supporting the players healthy? How do you keep all the areas that the players are playing in healthy and sanitized and sterile inside the bubble? And we're all saying inside the bubble now for the period of time going forward. And this is going to be true, particularly for businesses that are operating at scale everywhere, but now very much because in Australia, the pandemic has entered its chronic phase, we can now start to think about, oh, how do we manage this transition? So businesses will be managing this transition by appointing what is probably going to be called a chief health officer, but they will be the point person in the organization for managing the biosecurity of the organization, of its employees and its customers. One of the first ways that's going to get unfolded, and we can already see this happening, is in the emergence, this is trend 3, of contactless culture. Apparently, Google saw a lot of searches for how do I clean my money coming from Australia, which is really funny because we have plastic money. We have some of the easiest money in the world to clean. But all of a sudden, everyone who looked at the bills and the coins in their pockets went, oh my God, who has been holding this? And Australia migrated very rapidly to basically paying by touch, paying by card, paying by Apple Pay or Google Pay. We stopped using cash. A lot of vendors stopped taking cash. This was the leading edge then of thinking through all processes that are human facing around this idea of being contactless. And we're only at the beginning of this. You still walk up, for instance, to a register at Kohl's and you have to tap on the screen. You're like, who's been tapping this? Or if you do this at a bank, it's like, all of this stuff is going to now start to migrate toward contactless as quickly as possible for the duration of this. So that is all now inside of a larger bubble. And we're talking about another larger bubble, which is the bubble of economic nationalism. Over around the next 6 months, we're going to see a rise of doing it ourselves where it's possible because we got caught out in our supply chains. And people are going to start to calculate, and businesses are going to start to calculate the value of doing something locally and paying more for it, but having a certain guarantee associated with it, or doing it distantly and relying on supply chains that have already imploded. And because there will be flare-ups in the situation from time to time, supply chains will continue to be unreliable for some time into the future. All right, very quickly, the four key findings in terms of the risks. The known. We've pulled the plug on the economy. We're trying to get it restarted. It's going to take an order of magnitude more cash poured in by the government that the government has already allocated. Think of this as trying to start a car. You have to get an enormous charge out of the battery to get the engine turning over. The known unknown is the second wave. We all worry about it. We don't know if it's going to happen. If it does happen and it's bad, it changes everything. We just don't know yet. The unknown known is the vaccine. There are a lot of promising candidates, but there has never been a successful human coronavirus vaccine. And we have to acknowledge that the vaccine may be further away than it looks. And finally, the unknown, which is that we have had this enormous jolt of instability inserted into every system, every organization, every government around the world, and there will be aftershocks. And there you go, that's the report.
There's a question in, how do you re-engage and a sense of importance to overcome complacency, which is creeping into the public domain in regards to the COVID-19? Maybe more so for our government communicators, but Mark, if you've got any thoughts on that as well?
I mean, look, I think just everyone should point at the NRL. Look at how careful the NRL is being, and the AFL is going to have to be, and say, look, if they have to be that careful, we all have to be that careful.
I am going to ask you all to make a final statement, a final comment in regards to what communicators should be thinking about and marketers should be thinking about into the next 6 months, going off of what Mark has talked about as well in terms of some of the trends. So, Mark, any final words?
Yeah, so listen, Australia has done so fantastically well that we've taken that sort of 30-minute horizon and it's now out to 6 months, out to the end of the year. If we continue to do well this month, and I think this is the thing that we forget, that we are being rewarded for doing well, and maybe that's why it feels harder than it should. We are being rewarded because we actually have a future that they don't have in America right now. America is having trouble seeing next month. If we make it to the end of next month well, we'll be able to see all the way through the next fiscal year. And I think that's something that we can then really start to use to plan with and to think about how we rebuild post-COVID.
Great. Well, panelists, thank you so much for giving the time. Simon, Judy, Nassim, Kate, Nick, Nat, Mark, and also Steve. Thank you.